Stop scrolling for just a moment, because this story might change the way you see dogs forever. For 117 long days, a giant Leonberger named Atlas sat quietly inside a shelter, watching family after family walk past his kennel. He wasn't there because he was aggressive or difficult. He wasn't sick or dangerous. The only reason nobody wanted him was because he was simply too big. Every visitor admired his beautiful golden coat and gentle eyes, but after reading his weight, they always shook their heads and walked away. Atlas never barked or begged for attention. He simply watched, hoping that one day someone would see his heart instead of his size. What nobody knew was that the same giant everyone feared would soon become the reason a little boy survived. Atlas had once lived a happy life with an elderly owner who loved him like family. But after his owner unexpectedly passed away, there was no one left to care for the enormous dog. With nowhere else to go, Atlas was taken to the shelter. The volunteers adored him because they knew how calm and affectionate he was. But convincing families to adopt a dog that weighed nearly 180 pounds was almost impossible. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Atlas watched smaller dogs arrive and leave while he remained alone in the same kennel, patiently waiting for someone who would finally give him a chance. Everything changed on a rainy Saturday when Daniel and Grace visited the shelter with their 4-year-old son, Noah. They had planned to adopt a medium-sized family dog, believing a giant breed would be too much responsibility. As they walked through the shelter, Noah suddenly stopped in front of Atlas's kennel. He looked up at the massive dog and quietly said, "That's the one." When Atlas approached, he didn't bark or jump against the gate. Instead, he slowly lowered himself onto the floor and gently rested his enormous head near Noah's tiny shoes. The little boy smiled, reached out his hand, and Atlas carefully licked his fingers. In that single moment, Daniel and Grace realized they weren't choosing a dog. Their son had already found his best friend. After Atlas came home, everyone warned the family that they had made a mistake. Friends insisted that such a massive dog couldn't safely live around a small child. But Atlas proved them wrong every single day. He followed Noah from room to room, slept outside his bedroom door every night, and calmly watched over him during every meal and every playtime. It almost seemed as though Atlas believed protecting Noah was the most important job he would ever have. No one had trained him to behave that way. His loyalty came naturally. And with every passing day, the bond between the giant dog and the little boy became stronger. Several months later, on what seemed like an ordinary summer afternoon, Daniel was mowing the lawn while Grace folded clothes upstairs. Noah was happily playing in the backyard, throwing a bright red ball near the family's old pond. Atlas rested quietly beneath a nearby tree, keeping one eye on the little boy as he always did. Then the ball rolled toward the water. Noah ran after it without thinking, slipped on the wet grass, and fell into the pond. There was no loud scream, no cry for help, and no one in the house noticed what had happened. Daniel couldn't hear anything over the sound of the lawnmower, and Grace had no idea her son was in danger. Atlas reacted before anyone else even realized something was wrong. He sprinted toward the pond and leaped into the water without hesitation. Carefully grabbing the back of Noah's shirt, he pulled with all his strength while making sure not to hurt the frightened little boy. Inch by inch, Atlas dragged Noah safely back onto the grass. Then, instead of running away, he stood over the child and barked as loudly as he could until Daniel shut off the mower and rushed over. Grace came running outside just in time to see Noah coughing and crying safely beside the pond. The doctor later explained that another minute underwater could have changed everything. Atlas hadn't simply rescued a child. He had saved an entire family from unimaginable heartbreak. News of Atlas's bravery quickly spread throughout the community, inspiring many people to visit the shelter and adopt large dogs that had been overlooked for months. Families began realizing that a dog's size says nothing about the size of its heart. Today, Atlas is older, with gray fur around his face and slower steps than before. But every morning, he still waits outside Noah's bedroom. Every afternoon, he walks beside him through the yard, and every evening he lies at the foot of his bed, faithfully watching over the little boy who once believed in him when no one else would. Sometimes the dog the world calls too big turns out to be exactly the hero one family needed. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes every dog deserves a second chance. The rescue made headlines across the state, and within days, Atlas became known as the gentle giant who had saved a little boy's life. Reporters visited the family's home. Neighbors stopped by with gifts, and people from nearby towns drove to the shelter, asking to meet the large dogs they had once ignored. But while everyone celebrated Atlas as a hero, nothing about his daily routine changed. Every morning, he still waited outside Noah's bedroom until the little boy woke up, followed him through the house during breakfast, and rested quietly nearby while Noah played. It was almost as if Atlas didn't understand that he had become famous. All he cared about was staying close to the little boy he loved. One cool autumn afternoon, Daniel decided to take Noah and Atlas on a hiking trip through a nearby forest. The weather was perfect, and colorful leaves covered the ground like a golden carpet. Noah laughed as he ran ahead on the trail while Atlas stayed only a few steps behind, watching every move the little boy made. Daniel and Grace smiled at the incredible bond between them. Atlas wasn't just a pet anymore. He had truly become a member of their family. As they ventured deeper into the forest, Noah spotted a beautiful blue butterfly fluttering between the trees. Without realizing how far he had wandered, he followed it off the main trail. Within moments, the thick woods surrounded him. When he finally stopped, the trail had disappeared from sight. Noah called out for his parents, but his small voice was swallowed by the forest. Fear quickly replaced his excitement as tears filled his eyes. Back on the trail, Daniel noticed Noah was gone. Panic spread through the family. They shouted his name again and again, searching every direction, but there was no answer. Grace was trembling, and Daniel immediately called emergency services. Before anyone could decide which way to search, Atlas suddenly lifted his head, sniffed the air, and sprinted into the woods. Without waiting for commands, the giant dog disappeared between the trees, following a scent only he could recognize. For nearly 20 minutes, the forest remained silent. Every second felt like an hour. Then, far in the distance, Daniel heard a familiar bark. It wasn't loud or frantic. It was steady, repeating every few seconds, as though Atlas was guiding them toward something. Daniel and the rescue team followed the sound as quickly as they could. After climbing over fallen logs and pushing through thick bushes, they finally found Noah sitting beneath a large oak tree, frightened but unharmed. Beside him lay Atlas, calmly keeping the little boy warm with his thick fur while refusing to leave his side. When Noah saw his parents, he burst into tears and wrapped his arms around Atlas before hugging his mother and father. The rescue workers couldn't believe what they had witnessed. Atlas had tracked Noah through dense forest, found him before anyone else, and stayed with him until help arrived. Once again, the giant dog everyone once believed was too big had protected the child he loved without hesitation. Daniel looked into Atlas's gentle eyes and quietly whispered, "You didn't just save our son twice, you completed our family forever." If you think Atlas is a true hero, let me know in the comments. And remember, sometimes the biggest miracles come with the biggest pause. If this story touched your heart, Don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment to support the channel. And if you love emotional animal stories with unforgettable heroes, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next inspiring story. Your support helps us bring you more incredible stories like this. Thank you for watching.